greatest Viking ship ever found was discovered on home soil in southern Norway.
For over 1,000 years, a massive mound in rural Norway held its breath. Locals called it sacred. Historians ignored it. But beneath 60 meters of earth lay the remains of a ship, and not just any ship. When archaeologists returned, what they uncovered didn't just rewrite Viking history. It revealed that the age of seafaring warriors began long before the world noticed. The Silent Giant. For centuries, the Herlaugshaugen burial mound stood untouched, a domed silhouette on the landscape of Leia, Norway, more than 60 meters wide and taller than a house. It was too deliberate to be natural, too immense to ignore, yet it remained an enigma. Locals whispered legends of kings and warriors buried beneath, but no one could say for sure. When early excavators dug into it during the 18th century, they found a few valuable objects, a bronze cauldron among them, then sealed the site again, undocumented and misunderstood. What was left behind was silence. No records, no answers, just a void wrapped in earth and folklore. For nearly 300 years, archaeologists passed it by. Without artifacts or datable material, Herlaugshaugen was a mystery too incomplete to solve. The idea of a Viking ship buried here was dismissed as romantic speculation. But science evolved, so did questions. When metal detectorists and archaeologists returned in recent years, they brought radar, magnetometers, and a renewed curiosity. The land still remembered. Signals from deep underground painted a picture no one expected. Rows of iron rivets forming the outline of a ship. It was time to listen to what the giant had been holding in silence. A burial that shouldn't exist. The iron rivets were the first clue, clusters of them, arranged in long, deliberate rows beneath the soil. Not scattered debris, not the result of collapsed buildings or accidental discard. These rivets had once held together overlapping planks, the hallmark of clinker-built ships used by Norse seafarers. But their true significance didn't register until radiocarbon dating told a story that contradicted everything historians thought they knew. From carefully retrieved wood fragments and charcoal embedded deep within the burial layers, labs returned a date that fell around 700 Common Era. That wasn't just surprising, it was disorienting. The Viking Age, by all traditional accounts, didn't begin until 793 Common Era, when Norse raiders stormed Lindisfarne Monastery in England and entered recorded European history in dramatic fashion. The Herlaugshaugen ship burial, however, predated that moment by nearly a century. And this was no modest coastal vessel. Based on the rivet pattern and burial scale, it was a true ship, long, wide, ocean-capable. It had been deliberately placed here, surrounded by artifacts and offerings that sadly vanished in a careless 18th century dig. The size of the burial mound alone demanded coordination, surplus resources, and respect. This was a grave for someone powerful, someone whose journey into the afterlife was marked by the same maritime grandeur that would later define Viking identity. If accurate, and multiple samples confirmed it, this meant the technology, the rituals, and the social hierarchies associated with the Vikings already existed in 700 Common Era. The implications were staggering. This wasn't a prelude to the Viking Age, it was part of a fully developed cultural tradition, one that had quietly matured long before history began keeping track. Herlaugshaugen wasn't ahead of its time. It revealed that our timeline was simply behind. The world before the Vikings. To understand what the Herlaugshaugen ship burial truly reveals, we have to step back, before the Viking Age, before the raiders and runestones, to the Merovingian period, spanning roughly 450 to 750 Common Era. This was an era most associated with the fragmented aftermath of Rome's collapse, when new kingdoms rose across Europe and Scandinavia lingered in the historical periphery. But that perception is beginning to crumble. Archaeological evidence has long hinted that these northern societies were not just farming villages scattered across fjords. Fortified settlements, specialized craftsmen, and emerging trade routes paint a picture of communities that were organized, capable, and globally connected. But the Herlaugshaugen burial pushes that idea further. It's not just a sign of wealth, it's proof of a complex maritime culture that had already mastered the logistics of ship construction, ceremonial burial, and regional power display. Think about what it would take to build a mound over 60 meters across. Thousands of cubic meters of soil had to be excavated, transported, and layered. That meant coordinated labor, surplus resources, and leadership strong enough to organize both. This wasn't a tribe burying a hero. It was a society honoring a maritime elite in a way that demanded engineering, ritual, and community alignment. Even more telling is the ship itself. Its construction style, clinker-built with overlapping planks, was advanced, suited for long-distance sailing, not just coastal paddling. This wasn't a primitive experiment in boat building. It was evidence of a people who already understood wind, current, and hull stability. In short, Norse seafaring culture didn't appear out of nowhere in 793 Common Era. It evolved slowly, below the radar of written history. The Herlaugshaugen Mound reveals that the traits we later attribute to the Vikings had already taken deep root generations earlier, quietly refining themselves until the world was ready to see. What the mound tried to hide. Long before archaeologists arrived with radar and lab kits, someone else had already disturbed the Herlaugshaugen burial. In the 1700s, when archaeology was closer to treasure hunting than science, an early excavation unearthed a bronze cauldron and other now lost items. No maps, no stratigraphy, no documentation, just fragments of something extraordinary, taken, scattered, and forgotten. The bronze cauldron alone could have rewritten chapters of early Scandinavian history. Bronze doesn't occur naturally in Norway. It must be forged from imported copper and tin, often acquired through vast trade networks stretching south into continental Europe or west across the seas. Its presence in a 7th century burial implies far more than wealth. It hints at cultural exchange, foreign alliances, and long-distance voyages, centuries before the Vikings were known abroad. But it's gone. So are the other items removed in haste, and with them, the fine details that archaeologists depend on. Weapon types that hint at status, ornaments that speak of identity, organic remains that offer clues through DNA and isotopes. The early dig, though well-meaning, stripped away context, like pulling a page from a book and losing the paragraph that made it matter. Modern archaeologists now work in a shadow, reconstructing a story from what little the mound still holds: iron rivets, soil layers, charcoal flakes. Every fragment is treated like a sacred sentence in a disappearing manuscript, because once that context is gone, it's not just objects that are lost, it's the people. Their voices, choices, and connections dissolve into silence. The Yellowstad Revelation. Then, in 2018, another mound began to speak. Near a quiet farm in Østfold County, Norway, archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar scanned a field they believed held little significance. But just beneath the surface, less than half a meter down, an unmistakable shape emerged, the full outline of a 20-meter Viking ship, buried intact beneath centuries of earth. It became known as the Yellowstad ship. And while the wood had largely rotted away, the rivet patterns told a familiar story. At first, the find seemed like a remarkable but isolated discovery. Then the dating results came in. The ship appeared to belong to the same late Merovingian period as Herlaugshaugen, potentially the late 700s Common Era. That changed everything. Yellowstad wasn't a fluke, it was confirmation. Ship burials of this scale weren't limited to one corner of Norway. They were part of a broader, earlier tradition, deliberate, elite, and more widespread than anyone had imagined. If two massive pre-Viking ship burials could be found within a few years of each other, how many more were waiting? How many lay hidden beneath farm fields, forest floors, or quietly eroding hillsides? These discoveries don't just support each other, they amplify one another. Together, Herlaugshaugen and Yellowstad suggest a coordinated maritime culture with shared rituals, technologies, and values, all predating what we call the Viking Age. They imply a forgotten chapter of Norse history, one rooted not in violence or conquest, but in construction, ceremony, and a deep connection to the sea. Rewriting the Viking origin story. Textbooks once treated the Viking Age as a sudden spark, a burst of ships, raids, and warrior culture erupting in 793 Common Era with the attack on Lindisfarne. But the Herlaugshaugen and Yellowstad burials reveal a deeper truth. There was no explosion. There was an ember, glowing for centuries beneath the soil. The traditions we call Viking, shipbuilding, elite burials, seafaring, were not inventions of the 8th century. They were legacies, passed down, refined, and inherited from a society already rich with structure and purpose. The Norse didn't leap into history as raiders. They drifted there on currents they had long mastered. This reframing doesn't diminish the Vikings. It elevates them. It roots their achievements in continuity rather than chaos. And it reminds us that history often records only what is loudest, not what came first. To understand the Vikings, we must first understand the silence they emerged from, and the ships that carried them forward. Beneath Norway's hills, a forgotten fleet still sleeps, waiting for curious minds to dig deeper. If this story reshaped what you thought you knew, share it. Subscribe for more untold histories. Because the past doesn't vanish, it just waits for someone to listen.